So the pullback or the correction in Bitcoin and most altcoins continues. It turns out that apparently most of the selling that we have seen, or a lot of the selling that we have seen, has been from the FTX bankruptcy estate selling GBTC. Apparently they were really big holders, and a large chunk of more than 50% of all of the withdrawals from GBTC apparently were the FTX bankruptcy estate. So they were waiting for that. They sold 22 million shares, which is more than 2 billion worth of GBTC. So that has been behind a lot of the selling. And so that, I'm afraid, is going to continue until they're done. And then when they're done, hopefully everything will stabilize. And people in the looking at, buying the dip in the ETF space will see what a bargain it is. Now, I just think, sometimes Bitcoin tends to have a little bit of a cycle in a week, and I just think that potentially, I'm not seeing any signs of a bottom yet this week. There are some really good levels that we should watch. I thought potentially last night, let's take a look at Bitcoin and where we are. I thought potentially last night that we could see a bit of a decent bounce at 40,000. It's just one of those kind of round number levels, and you see these previous lows, this low back here that we made on the 11th of December was around 40,000, and we dipped down to pretty close to 40,000 on the 3rd of January to start the year. And unfortunately that did not hold as support. We've dropped underneath it, and we've had a very quiet trading day underneath that 40,000 level. No bounce yet. And as you know, big picture, when I look at where we are from the high in November 2021 to the low in 2022, and we're looking at the 61.8, 38.2 range, then potentially back to 35,900 is where our next support is. And it's also a pretty interesting support and resistance level if we look left as well. So let's get rid of that. Now, there is a possibility, instead of looking at the fibs this way, there is a possibility that when we pull back to this weekly 20 moving average, which is not quite that far back, I'm always looking at, what if the fibs that I have drawn, even though they've reacted really well, what if they're not the ones that the market is looking at? Now, potentially, we could have seen a nice wave 1 here, and a wave 2, and potentially wave 1 of 3, or, I don't think this is a wave 3, but I think potentially wave 1 of 3. If that's the case, we should be looking at the low from September and these fib levels and see if the market is looking at this. Now, if I go down to here, to this swing then from September to the high in January, did we get a reaction at this 236 fib? I would argue we did, because we're holding underneath it. Look. And potentially we're underneath this 38.2 here, which would mean we would continue lower to the 50% of this swing. So let's mark where that 50% level is. And if we do that here, this is quite interesting, 36,900 again. So that would be 50% of this swing. So this is all adding to a lot of weight of potentially this is where we get to. Now, I'm not going to say that we're going to drop like a rock down here, and we may not even find support here. We could very easily have a bigger bounce before continuing lower. We could very easily have a little bit of a bounce and, back test these previous swing lows for resistance before we continue lower, and that's around 40,500. But I definitely think until we get down there that we're probably not done with this correction. And let's go back to the weekly. So we mark that 36,900, and again we go back from this low to this high and 35,900. So there actually it's not exactly in the same place, but it gives us a bit of a zone, doesn't it, between around 36,000 down to 35,900. So that's kind of where I think we're probably going to come back to. And at this point, with this bigger correction showing on the weekly, if we look here, we're in our second week of a Heikin-Ashi, and you can see previous weekly pullback corrections, you know, when we get more than one candle, they tend to last a few weeks. So that's quite cool, because we should get a really good sign of a bottoming pattern and a really good signal of a reversal on lower time frame moving averages. But until I think we get down there, we could potentially be seeing more losses. But, you know, potentially with the halving coming in April, we could have a bounce and then a bigger pullback. We tend to, previously in halvings, we have had a little bit of a pullback around the halving or just into it. And then the dip that comes after is a really extraordinary buying opportunity. So I think it's quite good at this point not to get chopped up. And I also really do think if it's going down, to get out the way so you have some cash on the side. Because if you do that rather than hodling and riding it all the way down, you're in a really good mind space to be watching for the opportunity and watching for the bullish reversal we need. You know, Bitcoin, if we look at every lows with these moving averages, we do get really nice signals and really nice opportunities. And you know, if you're holding on to a position and giving a lot back and riding it all the way down, you know, you're not quite in that mindset ready to pounce on the opportunities when they come. So that's how I'm seeing Bitcoin. Let's talk about ETH. Now, ETH has a lot of stuff coming, you know, not just the potential of an ETH ETF, but they've got a big upgrade imminent as well, which apparently everybody seems to be thinking is going to be a game changer for ETH scalability. So it's called the Den-Kun upgrade. I'm sure you know more about it than I do. And it's going to drastically reduce the L2 costs. So there are good things coming for ETH, and this is why we are looking for ETH as a buying opportunity. Now, I'm going to take everything off this chart. Let's talk about, first off, how I drew this channel, because one of the things that, this is a weekly chart of ETH dollar, because we are having a pretty nasty pullback in this one, and not kind of at any fib level that I was expecting. When I look at the pullback that we made in ETH from November 2021 to 2022, like Bitcoin, I think I do see this as a big corrective pullback. And certainly in ETH, this looks like a big ABC. It's just all crypto, you know, when it makes a base, it gets really slow to get going. And then it turns into a much bigger, more parabolic move. Now, when I look at ETH, then there are a few levels that I'm looking at to hold as a pullback, and if they don't hold, they're going to come all the way back to the bottom of this trend line. So first off, when we're in a move higher like this, what I tend to do is draw a trend line on the bottom. And if you're looking at TradingView, you can click a clone button to make a parallel channel, and then I put it from the high. And if I look where I drew it here, you know, this is exactly where we stopped. Now, I didn't draw it till afterwards, but I wish I had, because I would go, oh wow, that's a good place to stop. And also sometimes when I put the fibs on, which I do, if we do here from this high to low in ETH, it's very messy. We didn't get that really clear signal, did we, around this 236 fib. And when that happens, I tend to try the most recent swing and see if these are working a little bit better. Now, if we do that here in ETH, then we can see that they are working maybe a little bit better. It was a bit messy to start. And potentially, like Bitcoin, this is not the 61.8, but a 61.8 swing. And so potentially we are around these lows at a little bit of a 50% in the middle pivot level. In terms, if you're a candlestick trader though, looking at these weekly candlesticks, this is a bearish 3-day pattern. If we were to change this chart, for example, to a 2-week chart, you can see this is we've wiped out nearly 2 weeks of upside, and it's not a very happy look in terms of a bearish reversal. And so potentially we have got a little bit further to fall to the bottom of this range and this high. And if we go more than that, because of this is a 61.8, that would then put us underneath that 50% level, just like Bitcoin. And then we would look for that to be resistance. And potentially we continue lower to the 38.2, which is at 1913. So if we draw it that way, that's where our support ETH dollar is. If, however, let's look at this another way. Oops, I'll leave that on for now. If we put this from the high and all the way back to the low, 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 and see where's our 236 fib, we're underneath it. So the 38.2 is down here, isn't it, at 2,000. And if we take the most recent swing, this previous low that we're looking at to return to, this is kind of makes this a very cool level, because this is the 50%. So I'm just looking at these levels and where might we pull back to. And I would have to say from this low to high, this 50% level and these swing lows, which line up, by the way, with this previous high here, for me are looking like the most likely. And that's at 21,018. And underneath that, the next level comes down to is from this bigger 38.2, the 61.8, and somewhere between 2000 and 1977. But I really do think, especially with the weekly 20 moving average, that 21,019, 2119 in other words, is likely to be the next support, and we're not quite there yet. So even though we bounce here, I think we are likely to potentially continue lower. 2119 then is where I'm looking at. If we look at ETH Bitcoin, sorry, not wrong one. I'm going to look at Bitstamp because they have the biggest futures now. When we looked at this, we said any bounce in ETH Bitcoin would have resistance at, so look, let's start at the beginning. This is a big ABC. This was our 61.8 level that was previously support. And we said that above 0.0612 would be a bullish reversal and this whole big correction would be over. And we turned it just at that resistance. So whilst we stay underneath there, I have to say, for me in ETH Bitcoin, there is still a risk that we see one more swing lower and it comes down to 0.046. Now, in between here and there, that's quite a long way, isn't it? What would be short-term bullish? Well, short-term bullish would be if we didn't close more than 50% down on last week's big up swing. That would be short-term bullish. If we bounce from there, close back above the this weekly 200 moving average, you know, and had another go at this high and another leg higher, that would be bullish. For now, I have to say, especially with this big bullish week last week in play, and I think this late in the trend, I don't think it's a good idea to be selling ETH against Bitcoin. I don't think ETH Bitcoin in itself is a good trade. I would just let this play out and wait and see. At the moment, I think it's really all about Bitcoin ETF and waiting for the, you know, the selling in the GBTC to stop. So this would be bullish if we held it 50% back. If we get underneath that, that becomes a pretty nasty bearish reversal. And I have to say, I think we still continue lower. And 0.0462, I'm still looking at that bigger three-wave correction for ETH Bitcoin. So let's take a look at a few more coins. Let's take a look next at Ripple and ADA and Solana, because these are all having really big moves. Now ETH, so first off, let's talk about Ripple because it's a really key place. Whenever, you know, you have a bit of a move going on, whenever you test the previous lows, especially in crypto, they become really important, and you can get false. In crypto, you get high here, false new high, and then a reversal, low, retest to the low, and that's the bottom. And so here, as we're retesting these lows. If we get a swing failure pattern here on the weekly and Ripple, that would be quite bullish. And you can see on the daily, we've had a good look underneath this low, haven't we? But we haven't closed underneath it. So are we going to continue lower here in Ripple? If I measure from this high to this low and put this here, I don't think we've kind of reached that 61.8 level. I've always got to have this 0.42, 0.43 in my head as kind of first support. And short term in these swings, so I still think that there's a risk, unfortunately, if we break down under these lows, that this is where we continue to 0.42. And that would kind of put us in line with this big trend line all the way back from the lows, you know, in 2020. For now, though, short term, when I always look at, first thing I want to look at is the swing that we're inside of. So that would be from this low to high. Where are we in terms of fib retrace levels there? Because this is, in this instance, a pretty important 786 fib level. And for me, that 786 thing is pretty important because I close underneath it. As you know, I kind of think we're going to retest the highs or the lows. So potentially, this is a pretty good level. 0.498. And we're bouncing off it. Now, because this is a fib level and this is the 61.8 here, where we've got pretty good support and resistance on the daily, we can't say that we're going up unless we close and hold above this level, which is at 0.55. So if you are buying the bounce here, and you can see on the 15-minute, we're just flipping these 15-minute moving averages. So we are going to see more upside. Have we flipped our hourly moving averages yet? No, but we know that if we get above this 20 moving average, we're likely to bounce back up here to this 50, then we'll have a pullback. And so potentially we could see some more upside. So if you like Ripple here and you're doing that counter trend thing with it, especially you're trading the 15-minute, this 200 moving average, which is the hourly 50, would be your first target. And your second target is going to be this next fib level all the way up here at 0.55. And that would be a bounce and a downtrend. Above 0.55, Ripple has bottomed from this, and we are going to see more upside. And because this is a 786, we're going to go all the way up to 0.62. So yes, potentially this could be the bottom only if we hold above 0.55. Now, underneath, this also means, because these fib levels have been so beautifully respected, this also means that if we break down, we can now move this level down and say very clearly that if we get underneath on a lower time frame and hold underneath 0.4989, we are likely to continue lower. So 0.4989 then becomes key. But for now, no, lower time frame, this is looking like we're going to try a bounce. And how high we go and how it unfolds will tell us if it keeps going. ADA also retesting previous lows. So this is a daily chart here of ADA. Let's take these fibs away. Let's take everything away. I'm going to go to regular candlesticks, and so that we can see here, this is a bit of an interesting level because it's this high all the way back from April a year ago. And we are holding, sitting above it. And not only that, this also is another swing failure. That's where we try and make a new low, hold underneath this low, and close back above it. So short term, these swing failure patterns, they don't say bottom, but they do say bounce, and they bounce back to resistance. So there's a couple of ways that we could look at this. We're holding above the hourly. We've flipped our 15-minute moving averages, haven't we? So this is our first swing. And if we just do an ABC here, an equal measured move or something like this, or if we fail, for example, at this 15-minute 200 moving average, which is our hourly 50, that's just a bounce and a downtrend like this, and we're going to continue lower. If we get up here and then we do a higher low, we're going to see more upside. Where are we in terms of fib patterns? Well, there's a couple of ways I would look at this. like bigger picture, I have to say that this bearish cross of the daily moving average is a little bit scary. But if we get above those daily moving averages, you know, we've bottomed. If we look at where we are from the low here in June to the high that we made in December in ADA, we're bouncing from a 50% level. Well, that's huge, isn't it? When you pull back to a 50%, right? And you get above the 236, you're going to go 50% of the move. So now we've got some pretty decent targets, haven't we? Let's see if they line up with our hourly moving averages. This 236 fib is likely to be where we get to our hourly 200 moving average. It's at 0.5, and above it we're going to go all the way higher to 0.56 and 50% of this whole drop, and yeah, 0.56, and above 0.56 we've bottomed, and I think we're going up again. And so yeah, some of these looking like pretty interesting levels, but you know, it's very rare for crypto to make a V bottom like this. Most bottoms look like this. They're double bottoms, they're retests, they're bottoming patterns. Or this high here, which is a kind of head and shoulders in ADA, that's more common. So, you know, as we always say, the retest is the test. All of these moving averages are the wrong way round. So that's what I think here for ADA. Okay, let's take a look at some more interesting charts. Let's take a look at Doge. Now, this is a daily chart of Doge. I have to say this is pretty bearish with these daily moving averages, and this looks unfortunately like a bear flag. So no breakout for me, nothing doing or interesting to buy in Doge. There are some charts I like, unfortunately, and I like that, and just not that one at that time. Here is ANP, which we had some questions about. Now, when I look at the weekly on this, does it look like it's making a really nice bottoming pattern? Absolutely it does. And the main reason why I think it's making a really nice bottoming pattern is because we have flipped with a bullish cross these weekly moving averages. We've also made a higher high. So we've taken out this, so we, you know, when you're in a downtrend, you make lower lows and lower highs. We've taken out this previous swing high and we're holding above it here. So this for me says we've had a swing higher, we're going to consolidate or do a three-wave correction, and then at least I would expect another swing higher. I also, from this high to low, like how we're holding above this 236 fib level at 0.0031. So AMP, it's just a matter of when is this ready to go and turn higher again. And this week it's very choppy and messy in this sideways range. And I'm a little bit concerned that this is a double top, that we double topped at the top of this range, and that usually means this 8 was our first swing of correction, and we're still in that correction, and we're going sideways waiting for this 200 moving average to catch up. So I do like this as a bottoming pattern. I just don't think that this is quite ready to go higher yet. And if I wanted to watch this, you know, this is one of those ones that I would check once at the kind of the end of every day. And if we came down and here and, you know, a nice bullish reversal here, but I just don't think in terms of timing AMP is ready. Do I think it's making a nice bottoming pattern? Yes, and I think back down towards these lows would be a good place. But here in the middle, I really don't like that. Don't diddle in the middle. I know I keep saying it, but yeah, that's how I feel about this one. SFP. Here's a really interesting chart. This is another one on the weekly where, like AMP that we just looked at, I would like to stalk an entry in. This chart has spent, gosh, at least a year making a base and a bottom here at 0.34. I think that for this swing that there is a really good shot that we continue higher to the middle of this big high to low and around 1.76. And if I measure from this high to low, that's 50% here, or retrace. Now to do that, first place we've got to do is get above this 236 fib here at 0.95, but these fibs that are working best at the moment are from the high to this low. You can see we very rarely get down. You can see how well they were all respected, and we did a textbook 886 to the 50%. Here we are at the 942. That's where we should go back to. Now we broke above this 886 fib level, which was extremely good support and resistance. I'm looking for this level to hold on this pullback, and I think here or around here, a bullish reversal, just like the 15-minute flip that we just looked at. If we could get one of those here, or even buying a little at this level, would be the bullish signal I would like to see. So that's what I'm watching for in SFP. If we go to lower time frame levels, if I measure this whole correction from the high at the end of December, so I'm measuring from this high here to this low, and I'm going to project it from here, and I'm going to line it up properly. There we go. A little bit lower, maybe 0.62. This would be a nice equal measured move correction. It's just at the moment, you know, whatever time frame you look at, hourly, 4 hourly, we're underneath all of these important moving averages. We kind of really need to see, I think, yeah, back towards these previous 0.6, 0.59, 0.6 is where I'm looking for this one to find support and turn up again. At the moment, short term, this is still in a pretty sharp downtrend, but bigger picture on the weekly, on SFP, this is a really kind of interesting bottoming pattern. Okay, let's take a look at one we haven't looked at for a bit, which is SC, and then this is my favorite chart we'll look at, which is Chillers, doing really well. So here is Sia coin. Big picture then, where's our, this is a lovely bounce we've got. Where's our first target? If we go from the high in 2021 to the low that we made in 2022, our first target is going to be this 236 fib level at 0.0167. In between, there is a pretty strong support and resistance level though. I think if we're going to see a wobble and a pullback before there, we can see where this comes from all the way back to 2021 at 0.014. So we need to watch out for that. So short term, I would say we've got a short term interim target at 0.014. But for me, the big target should be for higher at 0.016. And I would like to see us above this, because I think we've got a really good shot back to these highs at 0.025. Now, this has got really overbought on the weekly time frame in Sia coin. So am I saying this is a good place to think about a new position? Absolutely not. But if we get a wobble and a little shallow pullback up here at 0.014, maybe a week or two of sideways consolidation, then I do think we have the opportunity of a better swing entry. But those are the levels I'm looking at. I think there's a bit of a wobble going on at 0.14. It may give you a correction that lasts 2 or 3 weeks like these previous corrections. But big picture, this is in an uptrend, and these pullbacks should keep going to 0.0167 next. I like this one a lot. Okay, so what are the chillers is a chart that I really like at the moment. Let's talk about why. Here on the weekly, for the first time since 2022, here we are above our weekly moving averages, right? So big picture in chillers. Let's just do the same as we did there. Big picture, we've got a lovely big 236 fib target all the way up here at this big swing low from 2021, and the 236 fib at 0.2. And we are only at 0.1. So that means we should, from here, double our money if we keep going. And you can see previously, when we've got above this weekly 50, we've really spiked. So I really do like the look of this chillers. And I really like how it closed on Sunday for me above this weekly 50 moving average. So this is what I'm looking at. And then when I look at the daily, this is lush, isn't it? Look at this lovely 3-wave correction consolidation. So if we go down and we draw this on a 4-hour, I'd like to see it break out from this and make a new high. And you can see this previous high is where we stalled. So this is going to be our first resistance that we have to get above at this 0.11 level. And above 0.11, that's the next swing higher. And I kind of really do like this correction. In fact, this is almost a 4-hour buy here tonight for me in chillers. If we can get more than 50%, I'm thinking of buying a little bit of this because I think this pullback is really a good look. Now, we might fail and still be going sideways at these highs. It could be that this, we need a bigger 3-wave correction here. And so I'm not going to go in with a ton of leverage, right? Because we could end up having to, sometimes you end up doing a bigger 3-wave correction. But as long as we are holding above this daily 200 moving average and we've got this lovely weekly look, I'm looking for more upside. So if we can break new highs above 0.11, first target is this support and resistance level and these previous highs at 0.14. And then the second target next is 0.2. And then above 0.2, 0.293. And these big highs are going to be the key target. For me, I really do like the look of this chillers. I think it's setting up really nicely. Okay, let's take a look at Prime, one we haven't looked at. Okay, I'm going to look at this on the weekly chart. What a nice chart. In a lovely weekly. Now, previously, we pulled back to these weekly 20 moving average. We spent 3-4 weeks stabilizing and up we went. And if in a correction that's kind of very similar looking, in terms of scale to this one that we made then in October of 2023, here we are at these previous lows. Here we are at the weekly 20 moving average. And here we are at this previous swing high. So this is a really cool level for Prime to find support and turn higher again from. We can look at it pretty clearly on the daily as well. If we break down here, obviously we're going to have a bigger pullback, probably 50% of this swing and back to the 200-day moving average. But between here and there, this is really interesting support. So again, a bit like ADA, I'd be looking at lower time frames, see if we are going to go higher here. And looky, we flipped the 15-minute above this hourly 50, which is the 15-minute 200. We are looking for more upside, previous swing highs, and potentially, I'm always a bit cautious. I much prefer to see a better bottoming pattern like a double bottom or triple bottom, something like that. But potentially, in a very nasty downtrend, we are at some interesting support levels. Let's go back and look for a bit more evidence of what we would need to see. So if we go all the way from the lows to this high in this one, where are we bouncing from? Gosh, it's almost but not quite the 50% level. I'm not a big fan of almost. I much prefer to see the level hit. And that means, gosh, we might on a retest tag this 50% level. It's at 6.5. But what a great place to think about buying some in Prime. So BMAX, that's the levels I'm looking at. Now, if we don't hold, or if we get underneath 6.5 and it becomes resistance, we could come back to the 61.8 at 5.2. But 6.5 is a really cool level to potentially find some support, and then we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we should see a big wave 5 higher in this one. So a lot of support around 6.5. I'm just watching this over the next couple of days to see if it makes a bottom and we can get that lovely big wave 5. Now, there's quite a few things that I look at for, was this really a wave 3? Well, if I measure this first swing, oops, wrong one. So remember, I'd always look for wave 3 to be either 1.618 or 2.618 of wave 1. This was a very nice 2.618. So this says to me, you know, I know sometimes we get truncated or shortened wave 5s, but yes, this is around 6.5, a really good place in prime to look for a pullback and a turn up higher. So I hope that helps. Okay. There are a couple of other charts that I'm thinking we are approaching potentially interesting levels. So one of them is Coinbase. So remember, Coinbase is custodian for more than half of all of the ETFs, which is pretty good for their business model. When I look at Coinbase, from the high of this stock launching in April 2021 to the low here in 2023, we reversed at this 38.2 fib. And here we are back testing this 236 fib, and we have not dropped underneath these previous double top level. We're at the weekly 20 moving average. This is a really good pace in a pullback for Coinbase to find some support and turn back higher again. This weekly 20 moving average of previously on big moves has been really interesting support and resistance. So big picture, this is looking like an interesting level. When I look at this here on a daily and I measure this correction that we've made, this high to low here, the low here at 118 was exactly an equal measured move level. That's pretty cool, because this was also a lovely three-wave correction in the middle. This is pretty cool because it tells us what we need to see to confirm that we've made a bottom. Here in Coinbase, if we can hold above 134 in this previous swing high and the daily 50 moving average at 134, we have bottomed. This correction is over and we're in our next swing higher. And so that's what I'm thinking here for Coinbase. Also, if I look at this most recent swing, is this what I'd really like to see, is this to be like a 50% level. It's kind of around there. It's not textbook. So potentially an interesting level for the Coinbase stock to bottom. Now, MicroStrategy, if that's what's going on, should also be close to a bottoming level. If I look at this, this is even more classic. Let's tidy up my chart and I'll show you why or how I'm looking at this. So big picture in MicroStrategy, normally, as you know, when you have a big equal measured move like this big pullback from the highs in 2021 was, you put your fib retrace levels on both swings. So if we do that here, you can see that MicroStrategy reversed exactly at a 50% level. Now, mean reverting markets tend to keep mean reverting, so that would mean that our first target on this pullback is 50%. And so now we're going to be looking at this and going, have we got here yet? And we nearly have. It's at 430. We're kind of slowing down, but we haven't got here. So 430 is where I'm looking for MicroStrategy to see if we can potentially put in a bit of a base here. So if you like that one, it's also another good way. In crypto, that's what I'm going to be looking for. And hopefully, you know, if we make a base here and go sideways, 200 moving average catches up. I have to say that this daily 200 moving average, they don't seem to care about it. We didn't quite tag it here either, so I wouldn't be too worried. And you know, when you are doing a 50% level, so if we do make a bottom here, the way I'm going to trade it is I'm going to put my fibs on again from the other direction, right? From this high to wherever we bottom. My first upside target is going to be the 50% level, which looks to be at 500. Okay, and if we get above 500, 580 will be the next target, and so on. So potentially a really good level for MicroStrategy to bounce from as well. Now, there's a few other charts in the crypto space doing this 50-50-50 thing as well. For example, let's take a look here. at Matic. Okay, I'm going to look at Matic on the short term. Let's take that away for now. So here, if I put my fibs on, is it Matic? I made a note. Yeah. So if we look at the high we made in Matic in February, a year ago, to the low that we made in September, where did we reverse? We reversed at this 50% level at 1.03. When you do that, so therefore you're always looking for 50% to be support going the other way. So if we do that in Matic here, from this low to high, we bounced from this 50%. Here's a really good example of what we should do. So we bounced from this 50%. Where did we go to? This is what I mean by mean reverting markets. Keep mean reverting. 50% couldn't keep going, and we are now in another swing lower. So you kind of tend to do that 50%, 50%, 50% until you break out. Now, big picture, we're now, obviously we had a really nice bounce from this 50% level, bounced 50%. Have we almost finished then in Matic? Because this is a big daily 200 moving average, and it's a 61.8 level, also a swing low. Maybe we have. If we have, and if we do bounce in Matic, and if we can recover this 50% level here, which was support and then resistance, and we can hold above it, then we've gone up and we've completed this correction. But that's how I tend to look at those 50% levels. So when we go back to MicroStrategy, if we bottom at this 50% level, our first target is going to be that 50% level, and it may be that's all we do. It may just get up to that 50%, right? And then it'll pull back 50%, and then 50%, and then we're going to keep going lower. So you kind of tend to keep doing those 50% retraces until you break out of the pattern. Okay, I hope that's useful. If there's anything else you'd like me to look at, let me know. Good luck. I'm not sure the Bitcoin or ETH have made a bottom yet, but certainly some of these alts are on interesting levels to watch. And please don't have any FOMO that you think you've missed them and they're going to take off without you. You know, that they literally are bounces in a downtrend at the moment, and the retest is the test that we need to watch for and see if they hold higher low or give us an entry.